Okay, so I'm just going to do a demo on Boolean modeling, and I've got an idea for the design that I want to do. Boolean, and again, it's named after this guy, George Boole. Yeah, no, B-O-O-L. Yeah, and B-O-O-L-E-A-N. Yeah. So, as usual, I'll start with a box, and that's often a good starting point for lots of things. And so, I want to make I'm basically doing a facade for what might be a townhouse or something like that. So, I've got a box there, and I'll then go to the Modify tab, and show you all getting used to this, and check the size. So, you can see there for a start that we don't have units set, so I'm going to go to the Customize menu and go to Unit Setup, and just make sure it's on metric, and I'll make it millimeters. The nice thing about this is you can come back and change this anytime, and it doesn't affect your scale or anything. So if you decide meters are easy to type in, you can come back and change it. So now when I select this, you can see the size in millimeters, and in fact maybe I will just go and do that right away because it's really large, and I'll change it to meters, so it's a bit easier to read. And yeah, so it's 3 meters by 1.5. So I'll make it, well, we can check what you know about the size of buildings. How wide do you think a terrace should be? Yeah, at least. Yeah, that's good actually. Yeah, so no. So so 2.5, probably about the minimum. But you can go up to 5 meters, maybe at most. That's a big one. Yeah, 6 would be a really big, huge terrace. Maybe up on in North Newtown you've got a couple of them, but 4.5 maybe though. Realistically, is about the limit for a modern one. And then the length, I'll just sketch that out by eye, and don't really know. Doesn't really matter how long it is. And then the height. So if we've got 2 stories, and I'll make each of them about 3 meters, so we'll make it 6 meters high. So that's the basic form. And then, so I can sculpt away with that, maybe just to get some ideas of the basic shape that I want. So I'll go back to the box tool again, and then for another box. Okay, so essentially I want to take the second one from the first one. So I'm going to select the first one, and then what you've got to remember with Booleans in Max is that they're not a command or a modify tool. So just to remind you, on the Modify tab you'll find all those modifiers which do all sorts of amazing things, but Booleans are on the Create tab, and you go to Compound Objects. So it needs to be on Geometry, that's the first option there, the sphere, and then Compound Objects. And you'll see there are actually 2, there's ProBoolean and Boolean. Boolean's just there because sometimes ProBoolean doesn't work perfectly, or you need to go back and use the legacy options that you have with the older tool. But generally, ProBoolean is much better, and you should always use that if you can. The other limitation, Boolean can only work with 2 objects. You can do Booleans on Booleans on Booleans if you want to do multiple things, but it gets really confusing. So again, ProBoolean is better mainly because you can work with multiple objects, and you can have as many as you like. And I'll show you how to do that in a minute. So again, I've got my first box selected. I'm going to click ProBoolean, and then you can see the options that come up. And probably one of the most common is just to use subtraction down here. So you set the option first, whether you want union, intersection, or subtraction usually, and then click Start Picking, and choose what you want to take away. Yep, it is. And and with simple objects, you should never have a problem. In theory, it can work with anything, but you can get some pretty complex geometry in this program, and it's not always 100%. But again, in theory, it works with everything. The nice thing about Max is that it will let you do it, even if it's going to give you an error, or if it gives you a weird result. Whereas, in Revit, sometimes it doesn't let you do things, and you can't finish the command because it won't let you complete it. But in Max, it'll always finish it, even if the result is, you might get a weird result, but then you can try and fix it. So at least you know what to maybe experiment with and make it work. So I'll just show how we can then build on this and combine some more objects with it. So back to the box tool, and I'll put in another box or two. And this is not the design I wanted, I'm just putting some ideas, but I'll do some other shapes, maybe a cylinder, and again combine that, so I'll just stick this one in here. Yeah, that's fine. So I'm going to join that one, so that's okay. So maybe this one I'll reposition, and then I'll lift it up off the ground, and yeah, that'll do. So you'll see now if I select the original box on the Modify tab, we can see it's now a ProBoolean. So it's not the box anymore. The box is there, but the object is this ProBoolean thing. So if we then find the part at the bottom, you can see then it lists everything. So the first thing is the box that I started with, and then the second subtraction there is the box that I've obviously subtracted. And so now I can continue up the top there and just click Start Picking again. And I'll leave it on subtraction, and I'll pick this other box. Obviously that's now taken away. I'm just going to press F4 on the keyboard. Oops, F4. Ah, that's annoying. Okay, that should be the shortcut to turn on edges. Function keys are a bit of a problem these days because of what they've done with... what have I done? That's all right. Yeah, what they've done with the function keys, then tried to put other shortcuts onto them. And so you probably see this with AutoCAD as well. You know, the F8 key used to be auto, but you know how the function keys don't always do what you want. If you've got a Mac, you'd know this, because on a Mac it's even worse. Oh, have they? Okay, so let's go and try that again. Is that going back? No. How annoying. Okay, so that should be back to normal. I won't risk the shortcut. Yeah, but I will talk a bit about it because those shortcuts in Macs are extremely useful. The function keys, when you're using the program a lot, you need to use them. It just makes life so much easier. So F3 and F4 particularly, really useful. And on a computer like this, it's a workstation, they should be fine. But again, because of all the mucking about that the computer development people have done, it's not full screen. Oh no, it won't be because the aspect's different. But is that how it was before? Oh, was it full screen? Oh, it was. Right, okay. Yeah. Oh, F3, so they're wireframe. So up here, if you go to this option, you can go to wireframe and then back to default shading. So that's what the F3 key would do normally. And then F4 turns on edge faces. And so that's where you can see the edges. And it's a bit hard because this colour is very close to the colour of the edges. So I'll just change that colour to something different. And then we'll see if I turn on edge faces. Yeah, yeah. And again, yes, so the shortcut's still not working, but should normally. So, yeah. Okay, so then looking at that stack again. Yeah, so that's the main thing you want to notice, that you've got the stack at the bottom as well as the one at the top. So the ProBoolean there is the object, and when you click on the little arrow there, that shows you the operands or the parts of that object, or the sub-objects. So the operands are the sub-objects. We'll come back to that. But really, with a Boolean, or ProBoolean, these are the parts down the bottom, as you're noticing. So, again, they're the different elements, the boxes. And so I'm going to add one more. I want to add that cylinder, but I'm going to change the option to union instead of subtraction. And then again, start picking, and I'll pick that cylinder, and it's added it instead of subtracting it. So, of course, because you can see them down in that list, we can get back to all of those original things. So if I decide I want the cylinder maybe to be a different size, I can select it down the bottom here, and then notice how it comes up in the stack at the top. So you can click on it there, and you will get the original properties like the radius. So that's the height, so the radius there. Exactly. Exactly, exactly. And that's the big difference between this and working with editable polys. And so in Revit, though, it's very similar when you have voids and other things subtracted from an extrusion or another solid. And so then say I want to change this box here from a union to a subtraction. Sorry, from a subtraction to a union. So we can do that as well. If I go back in the stack again and find the box down the bottom, and then you just need to choose the option you want. So I want this one to be a union instead of a subtraction. And then you just click change operation. So now it's... Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, pretty much. You can, so you can move it and do other things with it, yeah. So to do that, then you've got to go to this operands option. And then you'll see you get the move gizmo for the one that's selected down here. So you've got to work with those two lists together. But now I can move that one around. But it's a little bit confusing still because to change the size of that box, I still have to go down here and choose that box option to get those properties up. But you'll get used to it, and as long as you remember to look at both the top and the bottom, it's pretty good. So that's I suppose examples of simple operations. And then if we take it a bit further, maybe I want to get the box that I've used for this and modify that. So I'm going to extract it. So I've got it selected. That's the third box in the bottom list there, and I'm going to click extract selected. And then, sorry, I missed something, so I'll just undo that. So before I click extract selected, so I should have checked to see which option I had here. It was on remove. I actually want to have a copy of it instead of removing it. So I'm going to click copy, and then extract selected. And now there's a new box that's over the top of the other one. Yeah, so that's sort of interesting, yeah. So I'm going to go to the top. So I'm on operands. So I'm going to go to the top there to get out of this. Exactly. Yeah, then it's overlapping. Yeah. So remember with editable polys, you're working in this sub-object mode, and then to get out of it, you've got to go to the top. So on operands, I can only select the thing that I've got selected, but if I go to the top of the stack, then I can select anything. That's all. So it's just if you're in that sub-object, you can't. So now I've got the option to select this new box, and I can make it a bit narrower, and maybe not as high. Bring it up a bit. So, yeah, you can probably tell. I'm going to cut that from the original one to make a bit of a frame. So I'll again go back to the Boolean. On the Modify tab, I'm going to change it back to subtraction, and then start picking, and choose this one. Oh, there is, but yeah, you don't have to. Yeah, it's just sometimes when you're modelling, you can do it on the fly by eye, as long as you've got an overall idea of your size. Yeah, that's it. It's like model making in real life. Yeah, as long you do want to know your scale and have your measurements roughly right, but yeah, it's like you're building in real life. You don't get your tape measure out for every cut and sculpting you do. Yeah. So so then you can see there it's cut away all the way into the building, and I might want it to only cut to the facade there. Yeah. So we can change the order of the operations as well, and so there you can see we've got this subtraction, which is all the way at the bottom. So I have to think about this. I want it to... No, that'd be a bit of a head scratcher. I can make it do that, but sorry, that's going to be too confusing. So what I'll do instead is just manually bring it out. That's probably clearer. So we'll just bring this out, and that works. We could change the order so it joined them in a different way, but again, that's going to get confusing. You can. you can make it line up exactly, yeah. So, okay, so it's a bit more involved, but I'll show you. So, okay, so here, you can make it snap, and there are ways of moving the pivot point and getting it to line up, and all sorts of tricky things you can do with snapping, and you can get it to work, but in this case, I would do it by eye. So, and again, if you think about the order of this operation, you can do it that way as well by changing the order that things are joined and cut. But again, I didn't want to go too far with that, so 'cause I want to give you another example. So that's maybe one idea that I might have for my townhouse, but then I might think, well, I don't like that one, and I'll try something different. So I'll copy the whole thing across. So I'm just going to select it, hold down Shift, and then click and drag on the X-axis there. And, I've forgotten my own advice, I'm still in operands. So I'll undo that, I didn't notice, go to the top of the stack, and now if I again hold down Shift, click and drag, it copies the whole thing. I'm going to make it a copy. Exactly. Yeah, and I've made suburbs in 3ds Max, just making house after house and building after building. Yep, and all the streets. Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. I don't know why I do these things. Sometimes I just get carried away. And I have built little towns of, full of houses and other buildings. So going back to the this object, now I want to get the original box and start with that again. So I can just go back to that union, and again extract selected, and oops, I'll move the new one away. So maybe just to give you another example, I'll go in for a spline, or a line, going to the second option in that Create panel, which is the Shapes panel, and then going to Line. I'm going to turn on Auto Grid, and I can draw on the surface of this box. And so I want to get sort of a frame, and I'm just holding down Shift there to make it go straight at a right angle. Yeah, so Shift is like the ortho. Yeah. And so, I want to come up about to there, and across, and then back down. To about there, and then across again. So again, you can make this accurate, but I'm just doing it quickly. So that's closed, and so when you go back to the beginning, it gives you that option to close it. And then I want to give it some depth. So anyone who's looking at this who wants to look at using the thickness of the spline that I showed you last week, you do that on the rendering panel, and you can tick these options to get a radial or a rectangular thickness, which is a nice quick way of modelling things like that. But I don't want that, I want to do something different, so I'm going to turn those two options off, and instead I'm going to go to Extrude, and then just bring that height up to get some depth. So now I want to cut this away in a different direction. So all I'm trying to show you here is that you can use many different sorts of objects with these Booleans. So I'm going to go back and draw another spline, or another line, and I've still got Auto Grid on, so it's going to look for my surfaces, and I can draw on them. And I'm going to use some shortcuts here. I'm going to turn the Snaps option on, and just right click and check that I've got Vertex and Endpoint turned on. That's fine. And yep, that'll do. Okay, so it's turned on. I'm going to go back and turn it off. And I'm just going to start my first point on the surface. And that's actually a really good tip. If you've got Auto Grid on, it sometimes confuses it if you also use snaps, because it doesn't, so if you're snapping, say, to a corner there, it's not clear which surface you're drawing on. So it's often better to start it at least with snaps turned off. So I'm using Auto Grid, and I want to be clear which plane I'm drawing on. So there, that's where I want to start. Now I'm going to press S on the keyboard, and that's the shortcut to turn snaps on. Exactly, that's it. So you can turn snaps on and off as you draw using that shortcut. And that's really useful. So that S, just S on the keyboard. Yep, yep. Okay, so that's all I need the snaps for. So I'll turn snaps back off. And now again, holding down Shift, I'm just going to get it to go straight across and then down. And I'll take it back to the beginning. And again, it'll ask me to close it if I get close enough to that start point. So then, so I'll just go and change it to, again in the Modify tab, to Vertex. And grab my corner point there, and I'm going to just bring that down. And again, I'll turn snaps back on, and I can snap it from that corner point there. It's just being a bit difficult, they're out. And go right onto the corner of this thing. And I'm done with the snaps now, so I'll turn that off. And then again, just drag this one down by eye. So again, I'm in sub-object. I'm in the hierarchy over here. So to get out of it, again, I'm going to go to the top. And so vertex, they're the corner points. Yeah. So just like with a poly. They're all the corners. And then segment is the, each segment. And spline is the whole thing. So back to the top, and then I can extrude it just like the other one. And so it's gone the opposite way to what I want, so I can always make it go negative. And so notice here, I'm just clicking and dragging on those spinners. So move them up and down, hopefully getting used to that. And so I'll just reposition it, and that's actually another good tip. So it was right on the edge. I'm just bringing it back slightly so that when I subtract it, there's no chance of a sliver being left on the side. So it's overlapping completely. And now I can select again the original shape, and just like before, back to geometry, and then compound objects, and I can turn it into a Boolean. Again, clicking ProBoolean, make sure it's on subtraction, start picking, select my element. So again, it's a simple form, but I'll just show you very quickly. I used that exact technique to come up with the idea that I'm going to show you now for a townhouse that I'm doing. I've taken it into Revit now, but you can do that. So if you get your model and keep it in a rational way, if you start doing really crazy things, it'll work, and you can do anything you like in Max. We've just got to think about what's going to happen if you take it back into Revit. Is it still going to be buildable? And the common issue you'll have, especially when you're working with, say, an editable poly, you might start with a box. So if you're not doing Boolean modeling, polys are great. You can, again, convert to editable poly, and that's what we were looking at last week. When you start dragging these points around, you can get some really interesting forms. But is that buildable? Probably not. Very difficult. Very, very difficult, yeah. Because you've got these unusual surfaces. You get max all into no problem. And you can get them into Revit and make it work in Revit, but it's going to look really strange when you look at that in a wall or a roof. Because when you look at those surfaces, they're actually hyperbolic curves, even though it's only a four-sided surface, because the points are all at different heights. Again, Max has no problem with it, but Revit will make it look strange anyway. So just think about that as you're modelling. You can be creative and do whatever you like, but when you want to build it, you've got to rationalise a lot of that geometry. Again, I'll just show you the result of all of this once it was back into Revit. Here we are. Still nowhere near finished. I only started this on Tuesday, so 2 days ago, and so I started in Max, and then took it back into Revit, and that's how it's looking. So yeah, so just developing up that idea. Sorry? Yeah, yeah, yeah. It'll be in Glebe. It's not a real project. It's for a subject that I'm teaching. But yeah, we're teaching townhouse design, and so then that idea can be developed, and I've got an idea to put something similar, not the same, but a similar idea down the side, and that'll have a big influence on the planning of the interior. But again, you can often, because you're sculpting and modelling more freely in a program like Max, you can come up with these ideas in the same way that you do when you're model making as well. Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah, and that's I think why SketchUp is so popular, because you can work in that way. But again, Max can do all of those things as well, and then you don't get limited with SketchUp. You'll hit a wall if you start doing organic things, but with this, you can push it. And and this is 2018. So last week I had to show you 2017. This week I can quickly try and have a go at what I was showing you last week with the subdivs. So I'll just get, you can see there we've got these edges, and I'm just going to bring this panel out so you can see the options, and then show you that I'm in edge mode. And we've got these subdivision options, and then yeah, so let's put some, actually I'll just do the whole thing. And then I'll just increase that a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to add what's called an open subdiv modifier. There we go. That's how it's meant to work. So last week, notice how when I showed it to you, it just looked weird and didn't work properly. That was 2017. But with 2018, they got the open subdivs, or it's called subdiv modeling. Subdiv, so it's subdivisions basically. And so the idea is, instead of manually modelling in all of these curves, you can set the amount of subdivisions that you want at those edges to get. Exactly. Exactly. So now going back to the edges there, we can use that things like the crease option to change the settings, and it's an amazing technique. When you get right into it, you can do beautiful organic geometry without modelling, a huge amount of complexity. Oh, you can't build this stuff. You can't. It's for CGI, but it's nice if you need to do cushions and fabrics and furniture in your designs. That's a nice way of doing it. Yeah, that's it. All of that. So yes, I just want to make that clear, because I know last week it might have seemed really strange. Why am I showing you this thing that just looks stupid? But it's a huge thing. If you know anyone who works with Maya, they've been doing this for years and years, and it's been a long time coming with Max, because Max has always had better polygonal modelling tools than Maya, but Maya's been years ahead in the subdivs and just the general, all the other modelling nerves and everything are better in Maya too. But yeah, Max is catching up with the subdivs. So yeah, just want to show you that. But yeah, the main thing is the Booleans. So try out some of those things, and then again, as you're working through the exercise, don't worry if it doesn't all turn out perfectly, but you want to focus on that idea of Boolean modelling, combining different 3D geometry usually. You'll see there are actually options for doing 2D things with cutters, but don't worry about that at first. Start just to think about the 3D geometry that you can subtract and combine like you're sculpting. And yeah, and then so try and get through all of that. And yeah, so I'll just remind you, in those exercises, it goes up to the buildings. That's where you finish. So if you can, yeah, definitely make sure you finish both of those. And then it's up to you if you want to go further than that. Did I show you this one with the cabinets that follows on? That is a really good exercise for interior people especially, even though it's the ugliest kitchen you'll ever see. I don't know what it is. American kitchens? Yeah, it's awful. But it is a really good exercise. So notice how that's only 200 pages of whatever. In fact, it's 100 pages in. So there's a lot more after that. And if you go right through this, you will become really good with 3ds Max. but again, all we're going to look at in class is the two buildings, and the rest is up to you. So I'll give you screens back. Hopefully, yeah, still got plenty of time to look at that stuff. Finish recording.